Now,
We have 5 minutes.
okay, and then we got 5 minutes of no talking, because everything's going out to the YouTube. Okay, how am I doing? Okay, everything looks good. And what's it say? There, it's up and running now. We are live. Okay, so now we go back in here and Welcome to the Community Conversations on Politics in the West Central Mountains. I'm Dr. Brian Williams, president of McCall College, and I serve as moderator of this series. McCall College is a local, specialized college offering meaningful education to students of all ages. We currently offer classes in general basic education for the GED, math for the trades, fine art, and sound and video courses. The motto of the series we're embarking on tonight is Local Voices, addressing local issues. We have a number of other videos on our YouTube site that might be of interest to you. They include videos on vaccine hesitancy and also pandemic mental health. And feel free to check those out while you're on the YouTube site. We invite anyone running for public office in the upcoming elections in the West Central Mountains to contact me at president@mccallcollege.org for a one-on-one conversation like we're having tonight. And we particularly want to welcome Lyle Nelson. Lyle, welcome. You're a long-term resident of McCall. You've got quite a history with us, and we so appreciate having you with us. And I hope you're going to touch on your Olympic status as we just finished up the Olympics, and we thought about you, and we'll be thinking about you more as the Winter Olympics come along. But Lyle, welcome. Would you take a moment, please introduce yourself and tell us why you want to run for public office?
Thanks, Brian. I'm Lyle Nelson. I grew up in McCall, went to grade school through high school here, and then I had a rather abrupt departure a few weeks after high school, and I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point, and then upon graduation I was an officer in the Army, and I can't tell you, fortunately, any war stories. 3 of my 4 Olympic competitions I was in the Army. So I was skiing while representing the Army. After those Olympics, I commentated for the television networks for the next 3 Olympics and then worked full-time for the Olympics again. So I had a long run with the Olympics. I'll skip forward to a time when I started working at McCall Memorial Hospital, and later that became St. Luke's McCall, and I worked in public health. Then I went on to become, for St. Luke's Health System, the administrator of community health, which is a position that promotes general well-being in the communities. How do we promote health instead of just treat illnesses? And that takes me up to present time. I still work for St. Luke's part-time. I'm 72. Like many part-time retirees, I'm busier than when working full-time. I'm married to Dr. Marcia Whitty, who is a physician in the Division of Public Health, who oversees the well-being, health, and in particularly a lot of interest in prevention and with COVID. We have 2 children. Our daughter Lydia Ann is 9 in the 4th grade here. My son Nelson is 12. That's my history of such. And then why do I want to run for city council? Well, I think the first reason is just service. In telling that story of little bit portrayal of life activities, I have a huge indebtedness and appreciation for the city, and I think of the town of McCall when I grew up. I think of the mothers who helped out the little ski hill, and the fact that my early coaches were Olympians, and that experience in McCall was a launch pad to 4 Olympics. I think the quality of our schools is amazing, and how much that has helped me. So here I am, 72 years old. I've been very busy most of my life, and it's I'm late getting to it, but it's time to do service. And then why City Council in particular? I think many of my experiences and expertise in community well-being, that as a profession, is an understanding of the impact of poverty and how much that robs people of health and happiness, and understanding things like housing And what does it mean to a kid to have insecure housing, and how important it is for young people to have security in a city, and that they feel safe in their city. And then you look at things like the after-school programs and the things we do for our kids. We're remarkable what we do for our kids, and yet we can't take our foot off the gas on that one because it is so important. So I think that I can bring some awareness of what we commonly call the social and environmental determinants of health in a city. Such things, again, as transportation, also healthcare infrastructure. And then the third reason that I think I would be a good candidate is problem-solving approach. And how do we define our problems? How do we think of what the insight, what we really want to achieve for that problem, and all of those kind of steps, identifying resources and problem solving. So I think all the candidates are excellent. Those are the three things that I would say are assets I have that I could bring to City Council. Thanks. If you want shorter answers from me,
No, I want you to feel like you've answered it as fully as you can. Thank you. And I appreciate your focus on housing. That came up fairly early, and we're probably going to come back to that a few times tonight, as I think that's such an important issue. And some of the other infrastructure questions we may come back to. But thank you for launching on that one. I think many of us really are struggling with the housing issue. But your more general sense of social and environmental, I think, is a wonderful capture of some of those problems. And so thanks for starting off with that issue.
Can I add one thing to that?
Please do.
I think the quality of life in McCall is excellent. I mean, when you think we're now the 13th healthiest rural county in America by U.S. News and World Report. And so we're doing a lot of things well here. It doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement, of course. And also the transformation, transition, the pressure on McCall, the expansion, and all these things. We have some new issues and new pressures, so I think it's at a really important time in McCall's history. I do want to acknowledge that I think the people who make this a great place to live are school teachers. I'm really, what city staff has done and the quality of them, so yes, we have problems and we want to fix them, but I think it's always important to have gratitude and appreciation for what is really outstanding here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you match your credentials and experience to some of these problems? Give us a bit more about you in that setting.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I've tried to be active in McCall. I've served on an officer of 5 or 6 different city agencies across time. I was very involved in the Youth Advisory Council. Now it's West Central Mountains Youth Advisory. Yeah, and so and looking at the issues and understanding the struggles of families, particularly with kids, and the importance of daycare, for example, the importance of how and what a community and every adult can do to make a kid feel appreciated. And we look at some of the problems in Idaho, and we have one of the highest suicide rates for kids in the nation. We have one of the worst go-on rates from high school to college in the nation. Well, and we have for 10 years. And McCall is an anomaly in that. We are the exception. But if you're the best in a bad, being the best in that, we need to do better. And of course, Idaho needs to do better too. So I think you asked in particular, where's my experience in that? In my job at St. Luke's, I also facilitated a statewide work group on child abuse and opportunities, and I learned a ton working with the state agencies, and really learned about the passion and that people are bringing and trying to fix some of these problems, but they're inveterate, they're systemized, and they're those are the kinds of things I bring a skill set to also.
Oh, thank you for all that you do bring. It really helps. I'd like to take you into one of the other infrastructure problems that has been a part of my experience in McCall from the first day I arrived, and that's sewer and water. Have you determined a path forward to address the problems that we've got for infrastructure? And feel free to take it into roads or the other infrastructure problems. But can you start with sewer and water for us?
Sure. One thing I think is important that a city council is kind of definitive and displays a clear vision around some of these things. On the other hand, we have a lot of experts that are working on it, that are advising the city and the council. So in particular, I'll start with sewage. And I think of the sewer district and how they, I think, are somewhat resistant to pressures for growth, resistance to anybody who's a particular interest group, and they are here to serve at the rate that they can grow for the benefit of the community. I think they have their mind well set on the people who are here and providing services to that in a reasonable growth. So I have a lot of trust in that, and I know City Council did a huge amount of work, and city staff with the sewer district to come up with the agreement that we currently have. So, and then again, referencing back, we have new issues as the pressure for some of these large developments come on. And here's an issue I have, or a thought. And again, I'll say, I welcome anybody to go, Lyle, I challenge your opinion. And call me at home if you want. It's fine, and I know some of you already have. But when we think about allocation of limited resources, let's say sewer hookups, and if we allow a first come, first serve that says, I'm coming in with my 200 home or my 50 home, I need 50 sewer hookups, and do not have a more equitable means. And an example I think of is, so we reach our capacity, and then the next thing is somebody wants to do 200 unit that is definitely designated as affordable living. But we don't have the infrastructure to do the things we needed most, because we didn't put some kind of prioritization on it in time. I think we're in front of it, but we need to get even more in front of it. And that's we know we have to have some high density, affordable homing situations. And we need to make sure that sewer doesn't become the limitation that says we can't do that, as an example. And that comes up with other situations too, other economic situations where you have to pay for, whether it's even just road maintenance, and we can't pay for that. Oh, we should have thought about, we needed it over here, and we could have foreseen that. So that's thinking ahead. About water, I'm particularly impressed with United Payette's vision and scope to think water isn't just a matter of you turn your tap on, you go, I've got clean water, which is incredibly important for health and comfort, of course, but to encompass and say it's the whole waterway system, and that's part of our environment, and that it's a limited resource, and someday it may be as valuable as gold, and so that approach to looking at it in the broad scope of our rivers, our lakes, our boats, our pollution, our algae blooms. And does the water perk, does the ground table water? So I think how much that coalition has pulled together local expertise, regional expertise, state expertise, national intention of doing something right is a great example, and it really helps city planners and council and staff. It has become a great source of information and data.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lyle. Your conversation naturally bridges into the idea of taxes, because we have to pay for those things that we need, and it's pretty obvious we need a lot of things. And so the taxes of our region is an important area that our public wants to sense where you're going. And so when you think about our tax base, is there a particular tax rate that you are most concerned about? Would you increase or decrease that rate? How are you thinking about taxes?
Okay, thanks. Two things. I'll go first into a concern I think many of us have, and we feel this escalation of property tax. And there's a lot of not misinformation, but it's difficult to understand how your property taxes are totally based, how much they're going to appreciate. So I think we could do maybe a better job at getting that information out. Certainly everybody has that concern that the most vulnerable become the most exposed by tax increases. Nobody wants that. So I think the general escalation of property tax is something we have to look at. I'm not saying that it's inappropriate, but we need to be able to explain to the public year after year and that particular tax, so they can plan for that and listen carefully what to have to say. Then another thing I have about taxes, and it's one of the things why I think this is such a great place to live. We, to the extent that we can, impose taxes on ourselves of the services we really think are valuable. We think our schools are valuable here. And so the school tax, and a lot of counties in Idaho don't have a school tax. A lot of, and we do have levied, and so we can afford the quality of schools we have in the facilities. I think a really great example is a library bond that passes by, was it 89%? I think it was. I mean, that's phenomenal. And we argued. Now we didn't argue. The public and the city, and we really worked well together, kind of in a debate. And what can we afford, and what do we want? And we came up with a tax, the bonds on that. And I think that's an example of our library is amazing to me. My kids go to the library often in programs, and what they learn and what they came home from, and how much the city, the library staff really believes in child development. It's an augmentation to family. It's an augmentation to school. The community, most of whom don't have kids, still pay for it. Recognize, if we invest in our kids, we don't have to invest in our jails. We don't have to invest in drug recovery programs. We don't have to invest in bad health. And I think so. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but everybody wants to know that kids have an opportunity to create a healthy and happy life, and everybody wants an access. We have a senior center and whatever kinds of things that different segments of the community need. So I think, by and large, that if we all sat down and said, what do we get for our taxes here in McCall and in Valley County, we'd say it's a pretty good match for what we want to pay to what we get.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your passion for kids and education. I think that's also more than evident there.
Yeah, and it isn't just because I have kids.
Right.
I used to think when I travel, I don't know how many times I've been to Europe, all about ski and ski management, and the years I served on the Olympic Committee and traveled, and I'd be in so many airports and so many towns and different places, and I'd see somebody ask for money from me. And even the years when I didn't have much, and I always thought, if it's about some kid, if it's about some single mother, I can spare some money. It's always been really important to me. And now that I'm a parent, I go, oh my word, how difficult this is. Rewarding but difficult. And so I really think helping families and the kids is it's really, really important to me. And I have some other ones too. The sustainability, environmental sustainability is right up there with kids, and it's and of course making it affordable to live here. It's not just affordable housing. Now that's a great big part of it, but there's other aspects to affordability. I'm sorry, I'm wound up, I guess.
No, I'm glad I can push your buttons. And
Okay,
that's clearly
yeah.
a button I get to push.
Yeah.
I'd like to take you to a story. I was talking to a city employee in the middle of July. And this is a person that knows the answer to the question I was launching. And I asked that person, what's our population this weekend in McCall in the middle of July? And this person looked at me and he said, well, it's around 15,000. But he said it was 30,000 during the July 4th celebration. Now the sign that as we come into town, I think they're going to change it to something like 3,800 after the census. There is this incredible disparity between the people that live here, the people that have second homes and enjoy being here, and our general tourists and want to be here with all the wonderful quality of living that we offer. And so population growth is really difficult in a resort town. But I'd like to take you to that. And you just sort of touched on roads. And if you could sort of give us a sense of of how we manage our population growth, and if you can touch on roads, if you would please. If there's other ways that you want to help us think about population growth, take us there. But wow, how do we deal with population growth?
Yeah, I think the importance of dealing with it is the greatest asset in Valley County and McCall is our environment, the beauty. You know, you drive down Highway 55, and I got to thank some of these old fourth generation or second generation farmers who say that the scenic byway, the vistas coming down the road is really, really important, and they hung on to their property. So I think the growth managed is what do we want to be? And you know, you got to think at least 20 years out. That's not long-term thinking. What do you want it to look like when you drive, come into Round Valley, and then you come into Long Valley, and how we protect the sense of beauty? And I'll say a little bit why. Beauty is proven to improve our health. When we see trees and we see vistas, there is a calming thing. It's like home to our hearts and minds. So I think, how do we control growth? We control it in part by we don't allow degradation to our environment. And another thing I think is really important is the environment, like climate change, isn't something that happens somewhere else. It happens here, and that we have to look at our impact on the environment, and then say, using that as somewhat of our protection factor, how do you then manage growth in a state that's is by and large from the state a property rights state? And of course we are a property rights country, and the Constitution protects people's property rights, and it's quite convoluted to say we're going to restrict growth. You can't sell, you can't do on your property. But the city has a plan, and it has different zones of projected growth. I think every citizen needs to voice their concern about what they think. And by the way, our comprehensive plan, our vision about being sustainable, our vision about being affordable, our vision about being a safe place to live, about being a friendly place to live. And I have nothing against Coeur d'Alene, but we don't want McCall to be Coeur d'Alene. And I remember driving into Park City, Utah, when it was the same size as McCall on the same year. And you know, now Park City itself is 30,000 people, not counting what's around it. And we're just as beautiful. We're not quite as close to a big metro, but we're close to a metro. So we have to, I think we underestimate the pressure on McCall to grow, and that we're going to be one of these other mountain tourist towns that is a second home, primarily constructed town, and things we want to avoid. So the specifics to that question, the specifics of managing growth, I think there's some curtailment around sewage, some curtailment around a city's capacity for water. So we have some tools, but it's.
Would you work on it, for an example, would you work on, for our roads, would you work on a street light, would you work on stop signs, would you work on anything to help the parade that we all have to deal with all summer?
Yeah, isn't it really interesting for us? We think, man, the traffic is killing me, you know, and we have 2 stoplights, and you know, it still takes 5 minutes even on a busy weekend to go across town. And the visitors go, yeah, you got to go to McCall. It's just wide open. It's so easy to get around. And so I think that there is at some point a time that it's fair to close the gate. If you're here first and you have a quality of life you want to protect, you have you're first in line. And so it's fine to say enough is enough here. We have to maintain the quality of life as defined by the people who are currently here. We don't want to say, well, 10 minutes across town is okay when you don't think it is okay. So I think we need to be really adamant about what is our definition of quality of life, and City Council has to be part of saying we've got to show the courage to stick to that, and the vision and the courage to say in 20 years the quality of life in McCall will be as good as the people as they define it, envision it now. Now, what are the tools to manage that? That's complicated, and it takes the city recently authorized, for example, a housing authority where you can bring expertise in. You can't study something to death. You got to take some action, but you can't take action without expertise on your side. So I think the city is going in the right direction. I think City Council has made some good moves. And incidentally, I'm only appointed. So when I say the City Council has made good decisions, that's not a reflection on me in any way, because I wasn't there prior to my time. I hope that at some point in time people think Lyle made as good decisions on City Council as anybody has, but that's yet to be determined.
I'd love to give a sense of what you mean by close the gate. Can you give us one illustration that would help us to understand what you mean by closing the gate to protect those that are already here?
Yeah. So maybe some means, and I know that Idaho says you can't restrict short-term rentals, but I was reading a report sent to me by city staff that said Breckenridge has 3,900 separate short-term rental units in their town. So how do you restrict that? How do you put a number on it so that our entire basin doesn't become somebody's economic zone? And that is a restriction to say, oh, you just go buy and build a house in McCall, put 6 bedrooms in it, and you're going to make $1,000 a weekend on the busy weekends for your investment. And so I think to what extent we have the tools to do that. I think, again, that the infrastructure capacity around sewage and water could be managed in some way to slower growth.
Thank you. I'd like to. Did you want to? One more thought?
I would just say that if for somebody new coming to city council, somebody new coming to city government, and I am new, and there's a shortcoming to that. That means there's a learning curve. And when you look at some things as specific and go, I would do this. Well, maybe if you've been there 5 years and you think and I don't call that arrogant. Maybe that's confidence, or you know well enough. A little bit for me to say something like that now, I would have to say, I'm very passionate about those things. I don't know enough. And also when I think of city council, what am I going to bring? You may be passionate about 4 or 5 things, but what can you really affect? What can you really make a difference on? And I might think I'd like to be informed about most things, and that would really be impactful in 2 or 3 things. And how we manage limit growth. I don't know that one yet, and it might not be my expertise in the long run. Whereas I'm really into the general well-being of the public and what that means.
I'd like to take you into our business community.
Okay.
If we're to walk down the street and look at the windows of most of our businesses, I think we'd see help wanted signs on virtually all of them, if not most of them. And so I'd like to take you there and say, how in the world do we help our businesses to hire and keep employees so that our business development can continue?
Yeah, boy, what a challenge. And of course that's exacerbated by COVID at the moment. But anyhow, going back to affordable living and say, how do we create affordable housing? And it doesn't mean that everybody working in the retail and service industry can afford to buy here now. That we've kind of outstripped that. But that you should still be able to rent and then build up a bit of a nest egg and lead into ownership. And so I think the affordable housing and that goes back to the Housing Authority and where the federal grants are, other kinds of money to help do that, deed restricted. I know when I was first in the Army, I had to even have a roommate. I couldn't afford to live in kind of the nice apartments, but not nice, but adequate. It had a swimming pool and things, and it was fine living. And so I think we had to bring some people that opportunity that's higher density, apartment living, and there's some great examples of success that McCall's done, our predecessors. The Springs is, wow. So that's an example. You drive through Donnelly and look at that as a great assisted and financial living arrangement. So it can be done.
Thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate it when you came in, because you actually came in with your mask on.
Yeah.
And there were some situations that you were concerned about my health as you arrived for our conversation tonight. And I want to thank you for that care that you exhibited tonight for us here. And so I'd like to let that be a bridge into the pandemic, if you could, and to sort of wonder, you're deeply involved in public health.
Yes.
And you're more than aware of the mitigation strategies that we've been using to try and get this pandemic under control. What forms of public health mitigation should be utilized to protect our citizens? Lockdowns, masks, vaccination. Where would you like to say, as a representative of the people, this is what our city should be doing?
Well, we first look what works. Vaccination works. And where it really works is most vaccinated people do not get ill enough if they get a breakthrough case that they end up in the hospital, or worse yet, the ICU, or worse yet, the way some beds in the ICU become available. So when we look at what works, vaccinations work. I think almost everybody recognizes that. What works, wearing a mask works. And the vast majority understand that. And there, of course, is an entire industry around misinformation to discredit those two things. Isolation works. Now, some of those things have some drawback. Isolation, of course, we can do social distancing, but suddenly you say, well, we can't have a family reunion. For us, in our case, we couldn't have our 12-year-old's birthday party, and that's part of the steps we all need to take to get out of this. We need to get our vaccination rates as high as we can. We need to get as many people as possible to wear a mask. I think it's possible that you could go into Albertsons or Ridley's and that we could get to 70% of the people wearing a mask without doing a mask mandate, for example. Mask mandate does work. I think it's also divisive. Unfortunately, for where we are now, in my opinion, a mask mandate, the long-term divisiveness of it doesn't offset the short-term gain. So how do we implore people? The majority of the people are fine wearing a mask, and yet we're not diligent about it. And all of us say, oh, they're fine, I won't get it from them, or I don't need to wear it this trip, we're too compliant. And yet, if we were really informed, if we really understand, one of the next kids who gets seriously ill from COVID, and it's rare, but it happens, there are not many pediatric intensive care units beds in Idaho. And it's a travesty to think what happens. It's a travesty to be the kid who has some other condition and needs a ICU bed. And I just think we can prevail on people enough to say there's no shame involved, but it's just, it's the best. If you can wear a mask, do it. If you within your belief systems can get a vaccine and haven't, do it. Because pretty soon, it's like when those of us who get boosters, oh man, I mean, you could go into an ICU ward and feel pretty comfortable once you've got your 2 shots and your booster. Mm-hmm. And so freedom, to me, true freedom is that we take the precautions. So I would not vote, though my sense that way, I know to be definitive. I don't think in this conversation that I have been quite definitive that somebody say, I don't want somebody to say Lyle slippery. Didn't get to the issue. I know mask mandates are effective. In the short term, I'm not advocating for that, but I think, and I know the COVID task force local is going to really take on some ways that people can get the information that's meaningful for them. And another thing I would say that we can do, you know, we all have biases, and we tend to believe the information that fits with our bias. You know, I don't like wearing a mask, as an example, and you read some study that says they don't do any good, and you go, well, that makes sense. But no, really, it doesn't. You know, but we're all predisposed to that. And it's pretty easy to think of some medical expert, even a physician, who might be in the position for some ideological reason or personal benefit that espouse anti-vaccine information. That information is proven wrong. But that's I guess I'm a little strong in saying that, perhaps. It goes to, we need to question our own beliefs and our own sources of information. And if they don't add up, to go, might I change my position on this? Why can't we change our mind and decide, you know, COVID-19 Delta is a whole new disease. Now for that, I'll get vaccinated. I was adamantly against it previously when the caseloads were going way down and the hospital rates are going way down. Hey, there's new information. They're all going way up. We're maxed out. And now's the time I can change my beliefs or my position. I drew the wrong line in the sand about COVID-19 should not be the cross to die on. And you know, and just go. But when somebody tells me I don't like the government, tell me what to do. I go, I get that. Just don't make it vaccine is the wrong line.
Well, let's begin to close this off and our conversation together. I'd like for you to sort of synthesize the most important thing you want citizens to know about you.
Yeah.
What would that be?
I maybe have demonstrated it to an extent of a fault in our previous 40 minutes or whatever it was. I'm really passionate about the things that can be done better. I like people, and you know what, I'm questioning myself. Lyle, are you in a position to have the courage? I mean, leadership is about passion, it's about courage, it's about being informed. And we run for a position like this. Do I have it? Can I make that difference? So I like to let people know I'm really passionate. When I question myself and look and say, do you have the courage to really do what's right all the time, whether it's popular or not popular? And that is something I really want to, if chosen, at the end of it said, yeah, I was courageous. And then I'll think I did a really good job. What do I want them to know about me? I would like them to know that that affordable living, and without stress. Stress is just robs us of life, years of life, quality of life. How do we make it affordable to live in McCall? I think that is a huge priority and importance. And then I think McCall needs to be the mouse that roared. And there's that play about that. Forgot who wrote it. And that some little entity can roar. And I'd like to see McCall roar about climate change. And the responsibility every citizen can do. Can I ride my bike instead of take my car? Do I really need to buy something that takes energy to produce when I have 2 or 3 of them? Do I really need another whatever it is, from shoe to jacket to something? And so I think all of us have a chance in our own house, our own lives, our own commitment to that in 20 years we look out here, the environment looks the same, the water is the same, and on a worldwide basis, I'd like to think nationally that McCall can be a little role model community about climate change. So I think those are the things that are important to me. By the way, did I say that kids are important to me anytime?
Are you comfortable you've summarized your key issues so that people really understand your campaign?
You know, thanks, Brian, as a friend, for inviting me here, and thanks for the opportunity. I think about it was a chance to express some things. I don't think too much about that it's about being elected. I think it's about being making change in the community. I really enjoyed this opportunity. I'd like everybody who can enlighten me to where I didn't think perhaps as well as I could have during this time to go ahead and do that. And I'm easy to get hold of. So yes, I think I represented myself truthfully.
Would you like to amend? Live TV is very, very challenging. Is there anything you'd like to amend or clarify from what you've said tonight?
I wish I were, I don't need to clarify it. I wish I were more knowledgeable about some of the tax issues. I wish I were more knowledgeable about the tools to maintain growth. I have great trust in city council, but city council and city staff, but I don't think I'd amend something. I just would like to have been maybe a little more definitive in that area, but I'm not amending it.
Lyle, thank you for what you've done for our community. We've worked together in an awful lot of areas, and I so appreciate all the areas that you have struggled to make our city better. And so thank you for what you've done. Thank you for running and allowing yourself to be a public servant and go through that very challenging process of being elected. And so thank you for also taking the challenge of being here tonight. And so this is probably a pretty new experience for you. Yeah. And we do thank for that. Did you want to make a comment?
No, I'd say I'm just the first one to come into the politics, and so that's all right. It's kind of like being the first person to jump in the pool. The water's precious.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Well, we trust you've enjoyed our conversation tonight. I know I have. And I want to thank Lyle for being a partner in that conversation this evening. We also want to thank those that have helped us make this possible. And there's so many entities that have helped to make this possible. And the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation has assisted us in resources so that we could produce these kinds of videos for us, and have assisted in the development of equipment. And just recently, the Progressive Club of McCall has given us funding for lighting. And so we are very sensitive that the lighting is a lot better tonight, and we're thankful for them. We would like to invite other candidates who are running for public office in this election to come and be a partner in this conversation. We will only be dedicating the Thursdays in October, so we've got 4 left. I think it's 4. And we'd be pleased to make those available to the candidates that are running in the West Central Mountains. And so join us if you can, and to contact us to be a partner in these conversations, give me an email at president@mccallcollege.org. And so thank you for joining us, and until next week, and we trust we might have someone for you next week, and so be watching the newspapers, as you know, if you do something on Thursday night, you better be reading the paper on Thursday. And so thank you for watching us tonight. We appreciate you partnering with us as well. All of the conversations that we'll be having will be placed on our YouTube /McCall College site. And so feel free to share those conversations with others as we try and understand our candidates better. Thank you, and good night.